Hi, John. So good to have you alongside having a chat with me. John, do you want to tell us about the context of your work in California?
So I am the superintendent of the San Ramon Valley Unified School District here in Northern California, about 35 miles east of San Francisco. We are a suburban district. We have 30,000 students in 35 schools. And this particular district is more socioeconomically affluent. But we also have some data that shows that we aren't meeting the needs of each and every one of our students. So that's become our focus.
Yeah, that sounds like when we worked together in York Region, doesn't it? You know, on the surface, everything looked amazing. And then when you dug down into the subdata, it was kind of shocking.
Exactly. So we have great statistics when it comes to literacy rates and graduation rates and the number of national merit finalists and all the rest. However, even though the percentage of students are small who we aren't serving effectively, as we dig deeply into who are those students and what is it that they need, it has really been the big challenger for our work, but a great challenge, I would suggest.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're putting faces on the data.
We are absolutely putting faces on the understanding the learning strengths and the learning needs, understanding student identities, cultures, ethnicities, figuring out what it is we need to do to remove any barriers in terms of instruction or in terms of the learning environment. That has become our major focus here in San Ramon.
Excellent, excellent. So I talk about that learning environment as the third teacher. So the first teacher is the parent, the second teacher is the classroom teacher, and the third teacher is that learning space, those learning spaces. So that's a great focus and one that people can really make a difference in.
And you know,
Yeah.
Lynn, when I visit school, just out at schools today, I try to get out to schools at least 2 days a week. And I always meet with students when I go. And I ask the principal, don't just provide me the leadership class. I'm happy to meet them, but I want to just meet students who can share with me about their experience. And today I was visiting with students and they were saying, you know, this is such a welcoming place. I feel like I'm included here. I feel like I can reach out to the teachers and I feel that I'll never be let down here. And I was so moved by that because you're right. When
Yeah.
kids feel that safe, then I think
Yeah.
they're way more open to the learning.
Absolutely. I think that's really a key to unlocking all student success. And I talk to teachers and principals and superintendents about how do you know 10 things about each learner? And you know, there's a big gasp, and then they think about it so that it's about the academic learning, but it's also the social and emotional learning, isn't it?
Exactly. And I think that what we're trying to do here in our district very much aligns with the work that you and I were able to engage in. And frankly, you helped teach me many years ago that we are really knowing each student.
Right.
We're leaning in and it's a structured way. It's not just in a coincidental way. Like we have a whole system of how we lean in, who leans in, what processes we follow, what protocols we use.
Excellent. Oh, and so it's systematic, isn't it? And it's iterative. So it's not exactly lockstep, but we're going back, but you've got a framework. It sounds like our 14 parameter framework.
Exactly. And the framework, I always say, is the process that
Yep.
gets us to the focused work. I'm okay that that process looks different in 35 places, but I still know, again, everywhere, every time I visit, show me evidence of the process and what impact it's having.
Excellent. I love that. And John Hattie would love that too, about the impact, right? And
Yes.
John and I've been doing some work together, and he's always saying to me, so what? What's the impact? So I wanted to ask you about leading. How do you lead and you and your team to ensure all students are learning? What are some of the things you think about in leadership?
So I've learned from my many years now of doing leadership work that there needs to be a clear, compelling, motivating vision. The why has to be so understood. And frankly, as long as we use our data, as again, you know full well, in a way that tells the right story, not a story that's so up in the clouds that people can't actually relate to it, but our data tells a story about children, about adolescents. And that's our starting why. So that vision that is compelling is the starting point. And then our strategies need to be coherent. Something, again, I learned in my work with you. We cannot do 1,000 things.
Right.
So in my schools here in San Ramon, we are all committed to a similar kind of continuous improvement process that pretty much is that protocol that's followed throughout all of our schools, where we start with the data, we look deeply at the children, we bring the evidence of work to the table, we engage in a process of understanding what that means for our practice. And then, of course, we align our professional learning to whatever those particular gaps are in that particular grade level, department, or school. So those are some of the systemic components we've really been spending a lot of time working on here.
Oh, and that is so good that you're going back to the data and you're going back to the why. Why are we doing this? And what evidence do we have that we're making a difference? How about your aspiring leaders? How are you looking at promoting leaders across your district?
Well, again, I say this with great fondness, Lynn, because much of what I've learned, I'm sure you know, comes from our time together in New York Region that I've still used 15 years later. Because when you have a clear strategic path, whatever you call it, strategic plans, strategic directions, like I've described, and there are clear deliverables within that strategic plan regarding our students' abilities to read and write and create and think and engage in foundational math and so forth. That drives us in a way from the district office to the classroom and from the classroom to the district office, meaning that shared leadership model has to be reciprocal. It's not a one-way street. We provide direction, but we're also informed by the classroom, and the relationship that goes on within the district becomes so very, very important. And then all of our leadership development programs, aspiring leaders, new leaders, and ongoing leadership development are all aligned to that strategic direction, to that path that we're on. So I'm always looking for, tell me how what we're doing is moving our commitments forward. Tell me what impact what we're doing is having on our students. And last, most importantly, tell me what impact it's having on those students who maybe we are having the most difficulty serving. And that's where I think we then focus our efforts, because as we all know, if it's good, if it's necessary for some, it's good for all. If I could use a quote from our friend.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I love that. And what you're describing to me is parameter 1, shared beliefs and understandings, always going back to those, but also parameter 14 that we talked about, and that's shared responsibility and accountability. And how do we do that? By putting faces on the data. And you know, that's those 1, 6, and 14 are absolutely non-negotiables. Sounds like in your place and in the work I do as well.
And what I would say is that what makes me as the superintendent very proud is when I visit schools, we always worry at the district office that we're stating all of these things and we've made all of these commitments and we hope that they're happening. But I have to tell you that our process of putting names on the data is profound. And what I appreciate about it is, because we're newer at it here. I don't want you to think that we've been doing this for a very long time. I would say we've really been focused through the pandemic and after. And right now there is an energy when I visit schools as educators are talking to me about this process. And the reason I believe there is energy is because we've also supported the notion of precise interventions based upon what each student needs. And our collaboration time has become more intentional, driven by that. And what I love to see is educators who know they're making a difference get so excited about it.
Yes, absolutely. And that is exhilarating for us, isn't it? And when I think about this work, John, I think about getting out. When we started this work in York Region, I would go out and just chat with principals and probably in their office, and we'd have tea and cookies. But now I've realized this is not a good idea. And towards our time at the end in York Region, we started learning walks and talks where we went out and we had principals. And I remember saying to principals, show me where's the impact here? Show me a student that has really been accelerated. So that those walks and talks sound like they're live in your place too.
I do not sit still when I visit. And what I love is our whole curriculum team. We've really supported to be that amazing connection between the district office and our schools. And what I've said to our principals, that relationship between, we call them supervisors here, and other places they're called different things, but the supervisor and principal relationship allows for us to understand each school and for the school also to have voice and influencing at the system level. And we really work hard at the walk. We don't sit in offices. I say no shows, no presentations. Let's just walk. And I ask one question: show me what has changed since the last time I have visited in relationship to one of our strategic directions. And they show me, and that's how we do it.
And you know, that's what you need to capture on video. Do you remember when we made all those videos in York Region and then we showed them everywhere? And it makes such a difference when people say, oh, is that what you're talking about? So those videos I still use. They're fabulous. So John, tell me about sustainability. This work sounds so exciting, and it just is a continuation and a progression from our work together. How are you going to sustain this good work?
So this is what I've learned about sustainability. We can't have 1,000 things going on in the district. And frankly, the world around us will definitely try to pull us into 1,000 different directions. So we spend a lot of time here thinking about how do we keep our focus? What is it that we need to buffer? What distractions do we actually need to minimize so that we can stay focused on the work? Because we're always going to be busy, and what people perceive as urgent will always pull us off this focus. Now, if it's an emergency, we understand it's an emergency. We've got to do what we have to do. But so often when people tell me there's an urgent issue that has to be dealt with right now, it's not as urgent as the conversation we're having right now, Lynn. We need to focus on our students. We need to focus on their learning. We need to support our teachers to provide the most effective instruction and the most precise interventions. And the other pieces of the puzzle we will always have to deal with, but we can't lose sight of the focus. That to me makes this work most sustainable.
Absolutely. And you know, John, at one of our Quest conference, Sir Michael Barber was there, and he said, and I've said it a million times, stay the course, hold your nerve until you get the results you want. Do you remember that?
I absolutely remember it. And I also remember that we can do that as long as we're not burning out on too many things. So part of my job is to figure out how to buffer some of the pressures that come from outside. Part of our principal's job, and I tell them this all the time when I meet with them, is you feed back to us anything we're doing at the district office that you believe is pulling you off this course. And we who work in district offices better be open to that feedback, because sometimes we could be part of the problem.
Absolutely, right on. So it's that that feedback loop from the field to the central and back and forth, which is really making that whole process transparent and quite frankly valuable.
Agreed. And you know, Lynn, the other thing I've been thinking a lot about lately is we all know the research on collective efficacy and the power it has to transform student learning. And I really am conscious, especially post-pandemic, that the whole notion of instructional design and the use of effective interventions is something that not all of my staff feels confident in. They want to know, well, I'll do whatever it takes, but I need help to know what it is. Is there something you can give me? Is there something that you could purchase for us? And what I'm really working with our team on right now is how do we build collective efficacy around instructional design and precise interventions? That's kind of the next step that we're really looking more deeply into right now.
And John, that really sounds like the assessment waterfall chart, and how you start with the curriculum. You have really precise learning intentions from the curriculum that evolve into co-constructed success criteria. And that then informs descriptive feedback, peer and self-assessment, and individual goal setting. It's that whole flow that
Right.
then informs instruction. And that's really sophisticated, isn't it?
It is very sophisticated. And I would say that our team has most of those pieces in play right now. And we're just getting a little bit more comfortable with them. We are really utilizing effective screeners and diagnostics, I think, more effectively. I'm seeing really creative instruction where kids' voice and choice is present, but I'm also seeing more descriptive feedback, because what we are also wrestling with here is, the traditional grading systems that we have all been, I'm going to use my opinion, hampered by for a long time, continue to get in the way sometimes. And I say to our teachers all the time, we had a big professional development day this week. I said, you know what? The feedback is what helps the student learn and grow. The summative grade that we are required to provide, if you use that in a way that hampers that learning, it's not going to help the student. Stay with the feedback. That's what I really am stressing.
Yeah, and that's that formative assessment, that diagnostic and formative assessment. And my work just right now is looking at co-constructed success criteria. And that's, again, very sophisticated, but thinking about what do the students need to know and be able to do to be successful in this unit of study, for example. And then the descriptive feedback is based on those co-constructed success criteria. So we're getting pretty excited about that.
And I would say that that's our next step. I did remember learning and experiencing that with you a few years back, but I think that that's our next step, because we are also really focusing on, let's be sure that our student voice and agency work is not just window dressing. And let's ensure that that student voice and agency is part of the learning process. So when we talk about, conferences, where is the student in relationship to their parent and teacher in that discussion? When we're talking about assessment, how are they owning the success criteria? And how is it that they're helping you, educator, create the words that make sense to them, not just the words that make sense to the adult? So this is our next step in terms of our student voice plan.
Fabulous, fabulous. Oh, it sounds amazing, John, the things you're doing. I could talk to you forever about this, but maybe sometime I'll get a chance to come out and do learning walks and talks with you.
Oh, that would be amazing, because we do love to do that. And again, the one sign, Lynn, that it's working is that nobody stops what they're doing when you walk in. Remember years ago, we'd walk into a classroom and everyone would stop and turn and say good morning and all that business. And that we've reached a different culture when nobody stops, the learning continues. You get down on the floor with kids and say, help me understand what you're learning. And they know what they're learning. They know why they're learning it. And they can actually tell you how they're going to be assessed. When I get to experience that, it is magical.
It is magical. Oh, John, this has been magical. Thank you. You've really
You're
inspired
welcome.
me today. It's wonderful. I knew you would. Thanks so much.
Lynn, I can say that we started working together many years ago, and I remember one particular time when you sat down with me and offered me a deep understanding of the framework that we're talking about. And I just want to thank you, because 15 years later, I'm still working from the same foundation.
Isn't that good? That's sustainability, John, isn't it?
It is absolutely a sustainable thing.
Thank you so much for this time.